agenda is the fireworks legislation, and I tried to put a copy of everything, the memos from the chief of police, from our law director. There's also a copy, I believe, of legislation in another community that did decide to modify the state legislation. As you recall, the draft that was initially proposed was tabled, and I just wanted to make sure that the council had an opportunity to continue that conversation. So if you choose to take action, you obviously would need to do that at the next meeting for it to take effect before the state legislation does, which I believe is on July 2nd. So that's when that takes effect. Counselor, Law Director, Counselor's confusing when you come to Lene, would you have anything you'd like to offer in discussion here at this point?
Just that, you guys do need to make some kind of decision before the new law passes, because our current ordinance conflicts with it. So you need to do something that says, yes, we're going to go by the Ohio Revised Code and change the ordinance to reflect that, or keep what we have, or modify what you have. So something does need to change, either way.
So I think one of the big concerns is, at least with some folks, is the wording that it is illegal to possess fireworks in the village limits, where it's legal to set them off outside of the village limits. However, so if you can possess them here in town but not set them off, am I phrasing that correctly? I know, Don, you said something like that before.
But liken it to firearms, being that they're legal to have in the community. They're just illegal to discharge in the community unless you're protecting life, limb or liberty, or whatever the acronym for that is. But
and you can modify the current language you have regarding possession of it.
Okay.
To say, yes, you're allowed to possess the ones that are now legal, but still not set them off.
Discharge them in the village limits.
Right.
Okay.
Well, the biggest problem that the fire chief had was the having and no one knowing. And since there was no limits, that really created a problem. So, in my opinion, I'm for if you can't set them off, why have them? Especially when it comes down to the people who were, the fire marshal or the fire chief, and they were the ones saying, it's the holding it that's their concern part of it. Yeah. Right. You can put a roof out to it.
I'm seeing it from both sides. So from the public safety side, I have to agree. It's dangerous. It can potentially injure severely firefighters that are trying to come in and put out a fire where this stuff is stored. Personally, I've not fireworks, but ammunition that's cooked off in the middle of the fire, and I've had that happen to me on a couple of occasions. And so I can understand that. At the same time, I can kind of see I understand Dayon's point. And Greg, I know that you've said something similar. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you and Chris had similar concerns as well.
Yeah, I just would rather err on the side of letting people do what they want to do, to a reasonable extent. Like Fire Chief said, I don't think it's a good idea to allow people to have a garage full of fireworks, but I'm not sure exactly how to quantify that to limit. Is it bigger than a bread box?
So go by weight.
Yeah.
And you have to have a scale.
Yeah.
I think that's what a brick of fireworks is, not the size of a loaf of bread.
Chris?
Yeah, my main concern is making criminals out of honest citizens to drive to Tip City or wherever they're sold at. I don't even know where you're going to buy them at here in Ohio. They drive over there, buy it, drive back home, and now you're not in compliance with the law. And so that's my main problem. I won't support an ordinance that reads the possession is illegal in the city. Obviously, support some restriction on it because I see the wisdom in trying to limit the risk to neighbors and different things and all of that. Where exactly that falls, I don't know, because there's risk all around us every day, and so we can't take all the risk out of life through ordinance, and we can't legislate common sense. If we could, that would be great. And so, and I say that with, I have no desire to go buy fireworks and stuff like that. It's not my thing. There's enough noise in my house anyways. But I don't mind it when the neighbors shooting their, it's just, the kids love that. But anyway, so I get that because you don't want the Wild West. And that's, I think, the picture that we're conjuring in our minds is the Wild West and everybody's just free for all. Is that a possibility? I suppose. Personally, I don't think with changing the law it's going to be a whole lot different than it has been. I don't know that it's going to be that big of a difference than what's been happening in Virginia.
I just thought last year was
Right.
well past what I'd seen in the past.
And it may have been. I don't know. I don't know that it's going to be that, and so we struggle as a community to say, okay, we're going to be more restrictive and we're going to take away freedoms or rights that exist if you live in the townships and things. Obviously, when you live in the city limits, you give up some of those things. That's a choice everybody makes, as far as zoning laws and things like that, that you have to, because you have to pay attention to how you affect your neighbors. And so I fully understand the big fireworks, let's have some kind of restriction on those to keep it at least to what we have, but this other one that was written, where they modified it, it looked to me like they defined fireworks as aerial displays, and then they allowed pretty much a lot of other things.
Bombs, snap caps.
Right, whatever. So,
Whiz bangs. Those have always been legal. Yeah.
So I don't know when it really changed. To me, it kind of read about the same. So I don't know exactly what that language is, or if you can define, what those are, because I guess I don't know enough about fireworks to know, because it says in the thing that they can only have so many grams of this or that, and the other thing. I don't even know what that really is.
Yeah, I need to go down that route though.
That would be my argument from the police chief side, is to having to have my officers determine what's legal, what's not. It's either all illegal or it's all legal. Otherwise, we're in the situation of having to determine, does this meet the criteria? Does this not meet the criteria?
You ought to live on the edge of town. Because if you live on the edge of town and not too far away, they're out of town. Last year, I about fell out on my chair a few times because they were shooting them off outside of town and nobody was doing anything about it. That scared the pee out of me a couple times. Because you could hear them. I mean, down at our end of town, Anthony, you know how close we are to the edge of town. And some of them were pretty heavy that they were setting off out there at the edge of town.
My thought is that you go to Tip City and you buy it and then you bring it back. But, city lines, township lines are all just arbitrary lines drawn, right? Whereas you go to Indiana, which was 45 minutes away, and do the same thing. I mean, so the only thing that changed is they brought in your hypothetical situation, if they brought the ability to buy it closer, but the lines are still arbitrary.
True, but you knew that when you crossed that state line, you were well, yeah.
They signed you, they had to sign a form saying you were.
And so all that kind of thing. And so I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's similar, but it was on a much larger scale because you were dealing with state government instead of a patchwork of legal here, not there, and all this other stuff. So,
I think for the most part, most places were going to the not allowing it.
This is the only time I have seen the state of Ohio enact legislation that allowed or said, go ahead and make your own rules if you want to. The only time you've been able to do something different is if you made them more stringent in the past. We do have city ordinances that are not state ordinances, peeling and squealing. You can't get out in the middle of the street and fill your tires. But there's nothing in the Ohio Revised Code says you can't. So that's why they go out in the country and do that.
and so if this is a trend, and the state and the current legislature passes more laws in that regard, my concern would be setting a precedent to continue to restrict freedoms that are being allowed. Obviously, there are times when it would make sense, I understand. But that's my problem with it. It's more of that kind of argument, not people are going to...
I think the reason they did that is...
Life is going to be diminished if they don't get to shoot off fireworks. I mean, that's not the argument.
I personally think the reason that the legislators did that is because obviously some communities are closer. Homes are closer than in other communities, and for safety reasons, they didn't want to take that ability away from those local municipalities to be able to keep that from occurring in their own places. That's my thought. It also went through 2 drafts before it actually passed.
Well, we have ordinances that dictate how tall your lawn can be, correct? And I don't know how that directly puts anyone's life or limb at risk. Someone's yard is,
I guess snakes and rabbit animals.
coronavirus, maybe.
It's primarily a property value issue.
But, so we do some dictating on how people have to live their lives to a certain respect through many, many ordinances, I guess is the point. And I think this one focuses more around safety than, property values or other things that are really, in many ways, more mundane when you talk about the cash value of something. I mean, we can't put a value on fingers, eyesight, life. Most people's properties are insured, but that's not guaranteed. That I don't think we have an ordinance that says people have to have property insurance in town. One of the things that the tornadoes showed me in Trotwood, so many people didn't have it. They owned their homes for years, sometimes decades, and didn't have something as simple as homeowners insurance.
Especially renters.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Tornado insurance, they didn't have.
I don't know, it's something that certainly we have.
It's a tough decision. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's at least some interest in moving away from the possession portion of the modifier. You can have possession, and that the only issue might be your ability to utilize it or set it off. Not everyone's spoken.
No, I'm more like the possession. I mean, when and the police.
You want that included?
Yeah.
You would go all the way. Okay, all right. Please continue. The staff needs some guidance if you're going to do anything before this law takes effect on July 2nd. So,
We need to hash that out tonight.
yes, you do.
Well, there's no choice.
It's a short agenda in part for that reason. I wasn't sure how long of a discussion this might take. So, please continue.
So I reload ammunition. So I keep bulk, I shouldn't say bulk, but I keep powder quantities but I take it upon myself to know how to store it, know the consequence of storing it, and and things like that. I don't know that everybody that casually engages in fireworks is going to take the same safety or respect in what they're doing. When I reload, I'm calculating grains. So I have a really good understanding of what those can do. I don't know that the average person buying fireworks is really quite aware of what all they threw in the box in the store, how one stray thing in there could really...
So they should have a fireworks class so that they know how to properly handle fireworks.
Here's one thing that I always tell all the newer guys that have come on with me, and that is, we don't typically see problems. We don't have those fires in houses that are well maintained. Right? So people are maintaining what they have, they're taking care of it. People are responsible. That's not where, those are where accidents happen, but that's not where we have serious problems 99% of the time. It's people that aren't thinking about it, that are not as responsible, that are not as concerned about their well-being or others. And that's where we have those larger fires. We've had fatality fires because they're not maintaining, they're not concerned, or they're not thinking, either because they don't think about it or they're under the influence of other things. So that's what worries me. Is, so then it's not so much people that are Dan or Chris or somebody like that that's going to be responsible and not go out and buy 200 pounds of fire explosives. But it's going to be the people that are going to be irresponsible. And then our first responders, and then the neighbors or people that are close in proximity that I would be worried about. So, but that's...
I pitch this out for a thought. When you talk ammo, a lot of times that's long-term storage because you pack your ammo or you reload your ammo and you're keeping it for a while. I don't see fireworks as something they're probably going to keep for a long time because if you keep them on the shelf too long, the life of them kind of dies a little bit and the big boom at the end is not as great as it was. So I think it's going to be short-lived that they buy them and they're going to buy them for the moment. They're going to use them pretty quick. That's my thought. I don't know how you feel, Mr. Warren, but that's kind of how I think about those. And when I talk about safety, I'm not as concerned about the storage at their house as they are letting them off in the yard. When they're drinking and they've got small children around, they're not doing safe things. So to me, it's the extinguishing of them when they're setting them off is a bigger concern. I share that concern on the fire department side. Obviously, if they have a garage full of them, yes, that's a huge problem. That's probably going to make a good crater when it goes off, and it's going to blow up the house next door. But I don't see people buying them that bulk for that moment. They're going to buy them short term. They're going to let them off, and they're going to be gone. I'm more concerned about the injuries that we would have related to the letting off of them than I would from the storage. That's not to say there won't be a problem with storage, but the shelf life of them is not like it is for ammo.
Kasey? You haven't said anything.
I mean, I think if you can possess them, yeah, I agree with what you said as well, but if you can't set them off in the city limits, then they're going to be your friend's house in the township, so buy them and drop them off at their house and head back home. Anyone can buy them, and any good cheaper to drive now. It's not like one guy had to make a trip to Indiana to buy themselves from.
Lottery tickets, beer, and fireworks. That was
There are stores like that.
No, they were all right next to each other on Route 40, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, they were right side by side,
Yep, they were.
down in Kentucky too.
Well, why wouldn't you treat,
What's that?
I don't know that people will know that we make it say illegal. Like, if the state of Ohio has legalized it, will people know that West Milton has made it?
Well, to advertise.
Then, yeah, well, it's up to us to make sure that it gets disseminated.
Sign, Facebook, social media.
Put it on their water bills.
And so Chief, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Let's, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but hypothetically speaking, if we do this and say, let's just say, you can't set them off at all. You get somebody on the first try, officer comes out, is it a warning or is it a?
We have always, even though fireworks has been illegal since 1972, I think it is, we have never went out on first offense and collected them, because we have a problem also. Where do we store them?
Yeah.
Safely for us, so that we obviously don't want to bring them into the building. And to me, that's not what the 4th of July and these holidays are about. I don't care if they shoot the fireworks off in a safe way out of the community. If we get a complaint, we go out. If we locate them, we'll tell them knock it off. They're going to shut it down. If we come back, then we enforce it. So we have always given them a warning, not on the first time. It's just kind of like a noise. So you go out and we get a noise complaint. We treat the fireworks the same way. We would go out, once you hear the noise or we locate it, we warn them, tell them we've had a complaint, we need you to knock it off for the night. If we don't go back, nothing comes of it. If we do come back, you can still see it going on. There's a visual thing there, so oftentimes the fireworks is long gone, the smoke's in the air, but the fireworks are gone and nobody's around. So we don't, it's hard, unless you pull up and somebody's got the lighter and they're lighting it, it's hard to catch them, I'll be honest with you. Because fireworks are quick. You'll see them as you're pulling up, but by the time you get there, all you got is a plume of smoke and a bunch of people standing around drinking a beer, and they're like, we don't know where that happened from. And you don't cite all 10 people.
Well, you just arrest the guy who's walking over to collect his beer, because that's the guy that said, hold my beer.
I mean, we try to be fair about this because it is a celebration.
is it illegal for minors or just legal for adults, not for minors, right?
Minors cannot, right?
Right, yeah. Why not adopt something like that, like cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana and everything else? Minors cannot possess.
It's at 21 now for cigarettes, which it never was until the last couple of years.
Well, my point is that
State law.
it's an adult issue.
Fireworks for minors illegal. We don't have to change anything for that.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay. So,
Well, our law needs to mirror whatever we're going to be doing. So if we're changing something the state law says, then that's what our ordinance needs to say, in addition to the things we're keeping. Because otherwise, what we'll have, I mean, if we passed and said we're opting out, basically all we're going to do is put a paragraph with our current ordinance, or code of ordinance that says we are still holding and enforce the current ordinance that says you cannot possess, you cannot discharge in the city limits or in the municipal limits. If we're doing something different, we'll have to modify that whole ordinance for that section that says you can possess them, but you can't discharge them.
So we have to do something before July
Yes,
2nd.
because our ordinance is going to be obsolete.
And that something could be, we're going with the state ruling,
Right.
and if we decide we don't like how this 4th of July went, we can change it.
Yeah, you can opt in or out.
So we don't have to make an everlasting decision.
No, we can
That's-
always change the ordinance.
Right, so, I mean,
And I was trying to scroll through and try and find examples of the ones that are legal now, the ones that aren't. They don't look legal, but.
For the same reasons that we have talked around the state about, for safety reasons more than anything else. And I share the same concern as Mr. Horn. I don't want someone's liberties and their rights deprived of them. Never do we want to do that.
Right.
I agree with him 100%. And it wasn't until the last meeting when he said that, it really dawned on me what he was trying to get at. I went home and told my wife, I think I understand what Mr. Horn's saying. That's not what our purpose is by any means. And personally, I think the legislators have muddied the law. It could have been very simple to say, we're going to change the law, and here it is. Now, you could obviously make it a little tighter. You can't supersede and make it less than what the state is, like you couldn't legalize marijuana when the state says it's illegal. No. But you could change it in ways. I mean,
Oh, no.
that's a poor excuse because it's about legal anyway. But I mean, you know, it's up. You could say this: we're gonna opt out, but if we feel that's a problem, or we're gonna change it, we're gonna allow them to possess it, but they can't shoot it off, and then we find out that's a problem. We'll go back and fix that too.
Why would you want to possess it if you can't shoot it up?
Well, the example that they're giving around here is that you're taking it to a friend's house. You don't want, they don't want them to be in violation as they're traveling through town, or they bring it to their home temporarily until they go out to the friend's house.
I'm an avid shooter, but I don't shoot in town. If you told me it was illegal to have a firearm in the town, that would create that problem, that issue of having it. It would make me a felon, or just by possessing it.
If we currently, if I have my car full of fireworks and I'm driving through town, that's illegal. Is that correct? If I'm just passing through, as long as I'm in the village, so even if I'm not, even if I don't live here, but okay, or whatever.
Right.
Stop for gas, whatever.
Well, then there's safety rules for, like, you can't have your rifle and your ammunition within proximity to each other.
Yeah, even though the law.
So there's rules on transportation and safety with firearms.
My thought is, like, with the possession, so like, even if somebody was just transiting through town, that would be illegal. That's what my question was.
Yeah. We have to have some sort of encounter with us, though. We're not going to, on the police side, we're not going to have a fireworks checkpoint.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That'll get our fireworks for next year.
Oh, that's how you finance the West Milton Fire.
You know what?
You guys need to write more tickets.
Somebody turn his mic off.
Great minds. Very good.
Well,
Could we say like you are allowed to possess, but not, a garage full? I know you said you can't, like, say how many grams or pounds, like, is there a way to quantify that?
to me, that would be about the easiest way. If you wanted to quantify it, would be by weight. That would be.
Well, how much of it's paper, how much of it's powder, how much of it's...
Yeah, that could be.
I need to write a requisition for some scales.
How about that ambiguous definition for personal use?
You have to have
more than
different
one
size
personal
scales.
use. It's probably not gonna stand up in court, but that at least gets you through the first season.
And set them off for like 48 straight hours, that's why I needed a garage.
Well, and you expand the number of holidays in which you can do it, so it's not just 4th of July. So
Yeah,
you're buying it for the year.
People really do put thought into this, because if 4th of July was on Friday, we knew we had to get rid of any fireworks we had by
Sure.
Sunday night.
Well, that's not
That
the
anything
case.
past Sunday night, you were really, it was not considered acceptable.
But that's not the case now.
No,
That's
so,
another factor. It's not
Yeah.
just 4th of July and we're over.
right.
Going to Wayne, I hate to see us do this. It just says, consumer grade fireworks do not contain more than 50 milligrams of explosive material. So,
Right.
you're talking about you're going to have to get scales, and I really don't think that we want to go to that.
Are fireworks typically labeled with how much,
What's that?
are fireworks typically labeled with how much explosive materials in them?
No.
So we would have to wait,
Not
we would have to disassemble them and wait.
Yeah, and they're typically like explosive devices are labeled as an explosive, and then there's different categories.
The problem is the stuff they're wrapped in doesn't count as that weight.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, you buy whatever, it says contains this much, buy whatever, I didn't know fireworks had that, that would make that easy if it was labeled, but right, that's.
How about no possession within 500 feet of school property or church?
Clears that whole town.
That's good. I think that was the point.
Because there's a church on there.
We could also restrict the days.
Yes.
So if we were just talking about all the days. And so if we wanted to, you could just make it July 4th, that there was any kind of,
Right.
you wouldn't need to take out all the rest of the holidays.
We just limit the days.
Right, you could limit the
There you
days.
go.
That's another way to come about it, to restrict the storage, because they're not going to be available, because wherever they're going to buy these at, they're probably not going to be, there's not going to be a ton of standalone stores that sell them all the time. I mean, a lot of them are probably going to be pop-up stores, like the Spirit Halloween places. And so you could also restrict it to however they describe July 4th and or New Year's, whatever. Would be another way to restrict what the state has put in place.
3 days around the 4th.
And I know that's the days we're mostly concerned about, but it just occurred to me that it said that we didn't hear that.
The way they spread the days out though, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily even have to have a pop-up store because, you know, next month there's going to be a
Right.
open season.
Right. Yeah. One a few minutes ago, it's almost legal.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
It will be soon. You know, the state will pass whatever, and perhaps they'll put this provision in to say that we can do whatever we're going to do.
Well, the thing is that the states have passed it, and federal law still says it's illegal.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and then the 500 feet from school or
Right.
church.
And so there's going to be other times in the future when we have to possibly have the same kind of discussion, because the state has thrown it to the local entities to say,
Which,
whatever, and many
I
of us
really think that's how it should be.
well, yeah.
I just thinking about that, I just harken back to the oath we take when we swear in. There's a portion of that that's to the Constitution and to the, well, I mean,
Charter and ordinances.
yeah, I mean, there's a, yeah.
If we say just keep it as is, keep our current ordinance. Chris isn't in favor of that.
I would be.
No, I'm not saying, we're not holding the vote or anything, but just
No.
the fact that you'll.
So, here, I don't know enough about fireworks to speak too intelligently about it, but, I would like for us to be able to do, and I'm not sure exactly how you, work this, but a week or two before Independence Day, you go to the store, get your firecrackers, your bottle rockets, maybe a couple other things, but by July 5th, that stuff needs to be gone. That would make me happy.
That's pretty much what Chris was saying, so we can
Right, because you can limit the
limit
days.
the days of the year.
When it comes down to whether or not we think they're safe or not, you can put a normal firecracker, not an M80, not any large amount, put it in the center of your hand, light it, and it'll go off, it's no problem. You close your hand on it, and you're picking up fingers somewhere else. So it doesn't take a lot to be dangerous. I mean, it really doesn't.
I could do that in my garage with power tools.
I was just thinking you can do that with a kitchen knife too.
True. Yeah. And I got many
Difference is
friends
most
that are
times
missing
you don't have
fingers
to do this.
from fireworks or missing them from bandsaws too. I mean, and there's that little safety stick you're supposed to use. It comes with every saw you buy.
But if you don't
What is that?
yourself, not your neighbor. And
True.
So that's where this discussion really comes to play.
You're not guaranteeing anything you launch up is coming back down in your property.
I can tell you what I've seen in court, and I don't know if this helps you at all or not.
No,
And I'm sure you can back me up on this, is, you know, even if you keep your ordinance the way it is, okay? Exactly the way it is. Usually everything's gonna happen, as it probably happened last year.
Yep.
People are gonna
It's
be setting
illegal.
off fireworks. Nobody's stupid with fireworks. Where if they're legal, it's gonna be a little more difficult to do that.
You can still get them on disturbing the peace, right?
Nope.
That's a double-edged sword, because, you know, we don't really have disturbing the peace as a nuisance
It's a
ordinance,
nuisance ordinance.
but in that situation, how do you enforce that when they're allowed to do neither?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double, you could say that.
They don't
I mean, I had a
listen.
situation last year, and I'm not kidding you, Saturday night, right down at the corner of Main and Market, I stood in the street as a lady was complaining about a guy across the street who had his stereo blaring because he was suffering from all the noises. He had PTSD. It sounded like World War III in the middle of the street. You didn't know where to turn to even go first. But my complaint was he was out doing fireworks with his noise. I ended up arresting him because he didn't comply and do what he was supposed to do. And I had a whole situation there where I ended up arresting him and the landlord because both of them were upset over the fireworks, and I wasn't doing anything about that. But when you've got them going off in every direction you think of, it's hard to address it. We'd come out of COVID, we knew it was going to be probably a little crazy. Now, we had illegal fireworks in effect, so you couldn't possess them, you couldn't let them off. But that night we didn't collect any because you didn't know where they were coming from. I worked here 5 years, and I have cited one person for setting off fireworks. And that was because the young man set them off and scared the bejeebies out of all the neighbors in the middle of the day. And I went back to the area where it was, and he let them off and scared the holy bejeebies out of me. And I knocked on the door, and I said, "What were you letting off?" And he had some kind of thing, so he made small craters in the backyard. And he said, "I let the last one off." I said, "Well, I have 5 complaints from people." I ended up citing him for letting those off. And he was only 14.
So we have no teeth for stupidity if we don't do something.
I mean, obviously, if they're aiming fireworks at houses.
Right.
Yeah, that they can still be cited for, but you don't have the recourse if it's just a normal fireworks.
See, I could just say it had to go above and beyond anything that you consider a nuisance.
Yes.
That's the way to look at it. The nuisance is very, very broad.
Right.
So it's got to be so egregious that there's no question it exceeds any definition of a nuisance.
Right.
Well, in the case that Doyle, police chief, cited, the individual was illegal anyway. He was underage. Even if fireworks would have been legal, he would have been illegal.
And an adult, he was letting go on.
So if we upheld, or if we opted out, but we changed the language to allow possession, you could still do your job basically the same way you did it last year.
Yeah, I gave you the example where they let them off before and you see the fireworks there. We don't typically go around collecting them, I'll be honest with you, because I don't have a place to store them. If we cite someone into court, I do collect them. If we were to cite someone into court for a violation, we would collect them. So what we do with them then is bring them in and put them in a 5-gallon bucket of water to try and keep them confused. We don't take them to court, but we do have to collect them. So we rarely collect them, I'll be honest with you. Most of the time, as I give you the example, you get a complaint, you drive there, as you're driving, you're like, ooh, oh, that is pretty cool. Well, you gotta find that. You go over there, and by the time you get it, it's plume smoke. But you have people standing around. It's gonna, unless I drive up the street and they're standing there with a Roman candle in their hand, letting the thing off, we normally don't do much with it. Because it's one of those things where I have to visually see it. Now, if there's an injury from it, they set a house on fire, yes, that's a whole different ballgame. The state fire marshal's office will be involved in that, our fire department will be there. That's a whole different set of circumstances.
How I kind of picture things, it's a few houses here or there because it's illegal, and the people that know it's illegal, that are rule followers, tend to follow those rules. You make it all legal, suddenly you've doubled the amount of houses that, or tripled or whatever, the amount of houses that think it's okay. So now locating where the one came from that started said person's house fire now becomes an even more, could be, difficult scenario.
But I think by merely saying we're going to opt out changes nothing we've done in the past. We're still going to get the complaints. Even if the law is passed and you said have a free-for-all, people are still going to call. They're still going to complain. And every agency in this county does the same thing every year. They'll tell the dispatcher for like Troy or Covington or Pickwood or us. We'll start a card and list all the addresses. We'll drive by them as we get a chance. Because we have other calls that are going on. And fireworks, as I said, has been illegal since 1972. So it's not on the priority things that we run right out. Oh, we're going to go catch some fireworks person tonight. We realize it's not okay. People are going to do the right thing most of the time. You have some that's going to let them off. And I told you last year, some of the best I saw was out on Emerald Road that was out of the municipality. So people had some really big ones out there. They're still going to have them. But this year they're not illegal. They can do them legally.
As long as they're not launching towards that.
Yeah, I didn't see them launch them toward that.
So who would enforce fireworks issues in the township? And what issues do they have?
The sheriff's office did the same thing as us. They would start a card and they would drive by the area if they found them shooting them off. They would do like us, stop and warn them, tell them to cease it. If they now they're not going to do anything. The sheriff's office won't do anything because it's going to be legal. Because townships don't have typically ordinances. They just go by state law.
There's a grass fire about every year that somebody has to send a truck out to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It's usually bushes, hedges, those kind of things. Dry stuff during the 4th of July. Hay fields.
Well, this is the first year you're going to be encountering this. I don't want to tell council what to do, but I'm inclined to think that instead of knee-jerk reaction, let's see how this 4th of July goes and then make the appropriate changes after that. If it gets really egregious, I think I'd be all for clamping down a bit, but I think like Doyle says, it's probably not going to be something you're going to eliminate just because you pass an ordinance.
is there any liability with letting it be mayhem? By ordinance?
Brandon's using that word. It's state law.
It's state law, so it's, it's a liability for you guys? No, not necessarily, as long as everybody's following the rules and those sort of things, but I want to say no all over because it's the fact that it's a state law. So you guys are following the law, enforcing the law, it's right. So as long as you guys are doing that, no, there's no liability on the next part.
I like the idea of having some type of teeth if there is something that is
Well, there's the current laws.
egregious, and much like the myth of a curfew in this town, which has been used by parents for generations, which turns out cannot be true. I think that there is certain things that parents repeat for their kids' safety, and that's illegal. You shouldn't do that. Nothing good happens after midnight. There's some truth to a lot of things that exist that way.
If you opt out, maybe all those people live somewhere else and they're fireworks, but it's wishful thinking.
I can tell you some kids that are internet savvy that are going to be coming back to Mom, it's illegal. It's legal. They said it's legal. We can do this.
No, I would think I would make it very clear that the school and I would communicate very sternly that it's illegal for minors to have it, even though there's this state thing that says it's okay for adults. Just like with drinking, if somebody gets caught selling alcohol to minors, I mean, they shut the place down or whatever.
The first beer a kid had's handed to them by their parents, and usually that first sparkler is lit by dad,
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, well, you're not going to stop them from handing them a beer either.
So if we opt out, keep it just the way it is for now, see how it works.
does safety things for a reason. At a minimum, I would want to see personally, I want to see
Control
it stay
people's
the
lives.
rules the way it is, and then my give and take comes on the making possession illegal, because I don't believe it's our intent to become the fire police as far as possession, but if people get stupid with what they're doing, it gives us teeth to
They get the house on fire.
say something stupid.
Yeah, I'm a Chris, but I don't think it's fairly safe.
Yeah.
I like that it's not actually getting enforced. How much I will not be on the door, we see any fires now. But at the same time, just knowing I'm technically doing something that breaks the law, like.
Makes it that much better.
Is he a thrill? No.
I know where you guys are at, and I completely see the point of view, but just for sake of trying to move forward, would you be okay explaining the point of view at the council meeting? So you guys.
Oh, no, man, it's just.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's not what I prefer to do.
Yes, I think this is, in general, we don't have, can't tell you last time we had any no votes or anything like that, so. But, so we'll move forward, we'll opt out, keep it the current language the way it is. And go from there.
It'd be on the agenda for you to vote. All right. Shall I move on?
Yep.
Next item in your packet, as you may recall, earlier this year, we were presented with two rate studies, one for the sanitary sewer utility and one for the water utility. I've given you copies of those studies, and I'll refresh your memory. I'll start with sanitary sewer. The rate consultant pointed out a couple of items. One, we looked at what rate increase would be necessary if there were no development east of the river, and that was significantly greater than what it might need to be with the development on the south side. This did not project on the north side. So to refresh your memory, across the board rate increase was 20% with only the west side, and could be less than 8% if you look at the south side of Stillwater Crossing. What I've asked the finance director to do is to provide you with a current update on the financial situation of the sanitary sewer. And that's based on our current capital improvement plan and the physical condition of the sewer since the end of the year. That's that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the pretty color one. I thought you could tell that's not part of the rate study. I will go back and say now, the numbers I just quoted you, the actual recommendation from Baker Tilly was looking at approximately a 4% rate increase in 2023 and 2024. Obviously, we've not taken any action at this point. In general, I would describe the two philosophies in rate increases simplistically as you rip the Band-Aid off in one fell swoop, or you do it a little bit at a time. So 2 years at 4% each is what I would call ripping the Band-Aid off a little bit at a time. And so just looking for some guidance